Mom's BF moved into my house, in no ways trying to set a curfew for met wine. Folks, please hit that subscribe button and like this post. Thank you for listening in general. A 29-year-old guy, an Ivy Bean, living in my own place for a while now. But let's back up a bit to how this all got started, particularly with my mom's 53. A couple of years back, she lost their house. Yeah, not the best turn of events, but the details aren't that important for what I'm about to unload here. Anyway, after she lost her place, it was a no-brainer for me to her move in with me. I mean, she's my mom, right? Why wouldn't do the same? Plus, I've been doing all right financially. I work in tech, which pays more than enough to keep us comfortable without needing to tighten our belts. So, her living with me was supposed to be temporary, just until she got back on her feet. But life has a funny way of redefining temporary. About a year ago, Mom started dipping her toes back into the dating pool. She met this guy, let's call him R, who was 47, and seemed all right at first. They hit it off pretty well, and 6 months into their relationship, they were pretty serious auras. Serious as you can get during that times of a global pandemic. When the lockdowns hit and everything started shutting down, R, who was also a divorce setter, was having a tough time with his splits and the whole co-parenting gig. One night, over dinner, Mom suggested that Maybar and his 2 kids, a 14-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy, could bunk with us until the global mess was. So that seemed reasonable enough at the time. His lease was up, and with the world going sideways, it felt right to offer some stability, not just to Mom and her boyfriend, but to 2 kids who were Budo, face a lot of uncertainties, so they moved in. I figured why not? I've met Ree enough times to know he wasn't a complete jerk, and while we weren't technically buddies, we were friendly hiskets. We're polite, a bit shy, but they seemed to warm up after a few movie nights. And shared meals, I thought of AITA. Helping out, plus it gave Mom something to focus on besides the past bitch, was a good thing in my book. Now, my house isn't a mansion, but it's spacious enough. 3 bedrooms, a couple of bathrooms, and a nice backyard. That was mostly underused until the kids showed up. I took the master bedroom. Mom had her room, and R and his kids. Shared's third one, we set up a schedule for chores, cooking, and all that. Household stuff, trying to make everyone feel like they had their own space and responsibilities. When R and his kids first moved in, it was under the whole banner of making the best out of a bud situation. The world outside was going nuts, and here we were trying to build a little island of sanity. I won't lie, it felt good being able to help, and honestly, watching my mom smile more at easy days made any inconvenience. Seems more that's the thing about family, or what feels like it at the time. We had to make things work. The first few weeks were, I'd say, surprisingly smooth hours. Kids were quiet, a mix of being in a new place and the whole situation delicate down. They stuck mostly to their room or sat with us during meals, politato, the point of seeming a bit uneasy, buffets to be expected. Right, new man around their mom. It's a lot for Indian, let alone kids or himself. See Meadow B, making an effort he'd help out with meals, sometimes taking over the kitchen to cook something he claimed was a specialty. You gotta try my chili, he'd boast, and honestly, it wasn't half bad. He was good about fixing things to a leaky faucet here, a squeaky door there. I appreciated that it made me feel like human, just here to ride out the storm, but actually contribute, Mom. Semi-drilly, taken with how he was around the house, often throwing. Mia looked like C's a good guy. We set some basic rules serially on it. It was my house, and while I'm not some dictator, I needed some semblance of order. We agreed on quiet hours, shared responsibilities, and privacy. Basic stuff to keep the peace rotted, along adding that he had some rules for his kids, which I told Tola respected. It's his right as a dad, and figured if he's laying down some law for his kids, he understood the need for some boundaries. The dynamic felt good. I'd finish up my workday and join everyone for dinner. We talk about all sorts of things, movies, the crazy state of thorough plans for the weekend, or Woodifton share stories from his past about places he'd traveled to or jobs he'd had. It was interesting stuff, and it gave to the man my mom was with. I started to think maybe this could work out for the long haul. I thought that it had really crossed my mind before, however. It wasn't all perfect. There were some old signs, little red flags, that I initially brushed off as nothing. More someone getting used to a new living situation, like Howard would insist on rearranging living room to better suit the flow of the house, or his habit of leaving his tools scattered around after a fixed-itch job, promising to clean up later. Wixom meetings meant a couple of days. Small annoyance is short, but nothing I couldn't handle. Then there was the TV situation, I like to think. I'm pretty generous with me stuff, but the TV in the living room was my pride and joy. Latest model, Ultra HD. It works, I didn't mind sharing, I'd especially for movie nights, but I had a bit of commandeering it for her channel surfing endlessly. And if his kids wanted to watch something, he'd bark at them about what they could, and couldn't watch it started to rub me the wrong way. This was still my house after all. But I let it slide. Why? Because Mom was happy. She laughed more, joked more. There was a light in her eyes that had been missing for a long time. So I bit my tongue, chalked up my annoyance to sharing space in a stressful time, and kept rolling with debenches. Then came the incident with Degridge. I'm a bit of a car guy, always have been. The garage is my sanctuary, a place where I tinker and unwind one weekend. I walked into the garage to find our rearranging my tools and workbench, just making some space. He said casual, like he wasn't turning Miprivate Haven upside down. I appreciate thought R, but I've got a system here, I told him, trying to keep my cool. He shrugged a bit too dismissive for my, but he stopped what he was doing, sure thing, but it helped if things were a bit more organized, right? That comment stuck with me. It was a nudge over a line I wasn't sure. I wanted anyone to cross looking back these first impressions, the foundation of what was to come, small encroachments, tiny tests of boundaries, like he was feeling out how much he could push before I'd push back, I guess. In those early days, I was still seeing things through a lens tinted by my desire to make my mom happy for now. Though those red flags were just fluttering in the periphery, not quite alarming enough to make a fuss about yet as the weeks turned into months. The initial gloss of having R and his kids around started to wear off. It wasn't just the small stuff anymore. His influence began creeping into every corner of the house, like some kind of slow-moving floodwater, and just like water, it started causing damage where Ilias expected it. One of the first Majorsons that R was taking over more than his share. The space was how he handled the groceries and meals, at first to pitch in occasionally, taking charge of dinner, which everyone appreciated. But gradually, he started making all the decisions about what we ate, without asking for any input. If I brought up buying something different, he'd brush it off, saying things like, no, the kids need to eat healthier, or I'm trying to teach them proper eating habits. Noble, sure, but this was still my house, and my fridge. He was rearranging then, there were his rules. What started as reasonable bedtime and homework rules for his kids began morphing into housewarming days. He posted a schedule on Thefridge one morning, complete with Corey assignments for everyone, including me. One needs to keep the place tidy, he'd say. Asafai hadn't been living in a clean house before. He showed up, his rules didn't stop. At chores either he started setting limits on how late I could watch Tabs against it. It was disturbing the house sleeping schedule. The same TV. When he started insisting we'll watch what he wanted movie, Nights Beckham Hours movie picks. Period. If he suggested something else, he'd laugh it off, maybe next time. He'd say, but next time never seemed to come around. When he wanted privacy, became another issue. Rad this way, just walking into rooms without knocking. My bedroom, which I had always kept off limits, was suddenly on. His casual walk-through tour when Heffled like it, just checking to see if you need anything, he'd say. But it felt more like he was marking his territory. He found him once, looking through my bookshelf, picking up books and flipping through them, as if he was in a bookstore just curious about what you read, he explained. When I raised an eyebrow at him, it was unsettling. It wasn't. Long before, his parenting style started spilling over onto me. I wasn't one of his kids, but you wouldn't know it from how he started talking to me. If I wash heading out to see friends, he'd throw in his 2 cents. You sure you should be going out with the virus still around? Or make sure you're back at a decent hour. It was like he forgot who owned the house the biggest. Clash came over the use of my home office. I worked from home, which I knew, but that didn't stop him from knocking on my door one afternoon with that proposal. I've been thinking he began your office would make a great study room for the kids during the Deju can work in the living room, right, Hesitant? So casually, as if he was doing me a favor by reallocating my workspace. I stared at him, trying to process the audacity. I need the office to work. Rich set up for my job, which by the way pays for it. This house, I finally respond, keeping my voice as calm as I could manage. He looked taken, aback, but only momentarily. Well, just the thought he mentored before walking away, but the seed was planted. It was clear he saw no real boundary to his influence. In my home, talking to Mom about it didn't go as I hoped when I brought up how rash behavior was becoming a problem. Shed a fleck, he's just trying to help, or he's good with the kids. Isn't that what matters? It was frustrating. It seemed like the more he overstepped, the more Ash justified it. I couldn't tell if she genuinely didn't see the issue, or if she was too caught up in the relationship totally. There might be a problem. The situation kept escalating. It wasn't just about a room or the TV anymore. It was about respect, effect, and boundaries to things that were quickly disappearing in my own home. I found myself retreating more, spending time in my room or out of the house, just to avoid confrontation, but I knew this couldn't go on. Something had to give, and I was getting tired of feeling like he a guest in my own place, tiptoeing around him. Avoid stepping on the toes of a Giwo. Shouldn't have been in a position to lay down the law in the first place. As these thoughts brooded, the day-to-day interactions grew. Tenser every comment from R felt like a challenge every suggestion. A decree I knew a confrontation was inevitable. It was only a matter of time before I'd have toasted up and reclaimed my space, but I dreaded the fallout, especially with Mom Little. I know that confrontation was closer than I thought, and it would start with something as simple as a late nitron. By the time the confrontation came around, I was practically walking 1 inches in my own home. It's weird how that happens, isn't it? One day you're decking up the castle, and the next, you're dodging landmines in your living room anyway. Here's how it all went down. It was a Thursday night, nothing special about it. I'd been cooped up all day banging out work emails and dealing with back Zoom calls. By the time evening rolled around, I was more than a little stir crazy, so I decided to clear me head with a run of late night run, which wasn't unusual for me. It's quieter, and honestly, it helps me unwind better than anything I got back around midnight, sweetie, and tired but feeling a bit more like myself. I headed straight to my room, not wanting to wake anyone as Dick Note R or his kids. I figured everyone was asleep and I could slip into bed and deal with tomorrow when it came. Ultimately came a lot sooner than I expected. As soon as I hit the bottom off the stairs the next morning, the atmosphere felt off. It was too quiet even for our usually subdued household. Ice rubbed it off and made my way to Thea's kitchen, thinking only of coffee. But before I could even reach the coffee pot, living room door swung open with a force that nearly took it off its hinges. There was our red-faced and obviously pissed about something. Hadn't wasted any time in here now. Had barked more a command than a request. A paused coffee forgotten, but I tried Tofia out what I could have possibly done to set him off like this. My first thought was maybe something had happened with his kids, or maybe there was some emergency. I stepped into the living room. He slammed the door behind me. The sound echoed a sharp clap that made it clear this wasn't going to be a calm discussion. Was there any need for tech? I asked more out of confusion than anything else. He just glared at me. And then he launched into it. How dare you come into the house at midnight, slamming doors and stomping around, you woke seconds. He accused, his voice rising with every word. I was taken aback first because I hadn't slammed any doors. I'm not a teenager sneaking in past care. Second, because he was standing there in my house, yelling at me like I was some kind of unruly kid. Look, I came in quietly. If I woke anyone, I didn't mean to. It wasn't that late, not that late. That cut me off. Stepping closer, his finger pointed right in. My face in this house, my night, is unacceptable, and you will respect the rules while you're under this roof. That's when I lost it. The audacity of this guy telling me about rules in my own house, it was just too much. I felt my own anger rising fast and hot, and I stepped up to him close enough to see the veins bulging in his neck. I didn't know who you think you are, but you didn't get to make rules for me, not in my house. I'm not one of your kids are. Andy are not my dad. You're just my mom's boyfriend, and that's all you'll ever be, said my voice, low and steady. Despotith, rage boiling inside you, could have heard a pin drop in the silence that followed. AR's face went through a whole range of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief. opened his mouth to say something, then closed it, then opened it again. Finally, he found his words. "I'm trying to rent a respectful house here," he said, booth his voice had lost some of its fire. "If you can't follow simple decency, I interrupted, throwing his words back at him. "You call it decent to walk into my home and start laying down the law? Like, oh, own the place, you think? That's respectful to me. To my home," he didn't fade. In answer for that, the room felt smaller. Somehow the air thick with the very thing that had been left. Unperformance, and then from the hallway, my mom appeared, drawn by the shouting. Her face was a mix of worry and confusion. "What's going on here?" she asked, looking from me to R and back again. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down enough to explain better. Before I could say anything, R jumped in. "Your son is out of control. He's disrespectful, and he doesn't follow any rules. This is my house." Or I cut him off, turning to face my mom. I've been trying to be accommodating, to be good about all this, but I can't do it anymore, not with him thinking he can run my life, Mom. Looked between us, biting her lip in thought way she does when she's trying to sort out a mess. "Maybe we should all sit down and talk about this," she suggested it. The peacemaker, but I was past stacking. "No, Mom, not this time. This isn't something we can just smooth over with AITA. He needs to go today." It was bold. Too bold, but it was out there now, and with those words hanging in the air of everything, changed, the lines were drawn in. It was clear things couldn't go back to how they were, not now, not after this. After the blowout with R, the house felt like a war zone that had just gone quiet, kind of quiet that's thick and heavy like it's holding back. A storm of her own retreated to their own corners. R and his kids upstairs, me in my room, and Mom. She was caught in the middle term between her son and her boyfriend. A place no one ever wants to be. The fallout was immediate. R avoided me like a plague, which was fine by me, but it was Mom's reaction that stung the most. She was giving me the silent treatment she hadn't done since I was a teenager. It was clear she wasn't happy about how things went down. "You didn't to kick him out," she said, once her voice low and hurt. "He was just trying to help in his way." I tried to explain this side about how ours help felt more Lakia. Take over about the loss of privacy and respect in my own home, but it was like talking to a brick wall. Mom had her view painted with the brushes of romance and hope, and it seemed no amount of realistic repaint those colors. Meanwhiller's presence became even more grating. Gay was technically still living with US Bob. We were like strangers passing in a ooze that felt too small. All of a sudden, his kids, caught in the crossfire, looked more and more confused and sad than anything. I felt bad for them. They didn't sign up for any of this. A couple of days after the argument, I came down for breakfast to find R sitting at the kitchen table, looking like he hadn't slept. His kids were there too, picking a fair food. The air was tense, uncomfortable. I grabbed a coffee and sat down, ready to keep to myself, but Ari cleared his throat, obviously gearing up. "To say something, I'll be looking for a new place," he finally said, not meeting my eye. "It's clear I've overstayed my welcome." His voice had lost its usual force. Now just tired and resigned, and nodded, feeling a mix of relief and awkwardness. "Thanks. I think that's fourth best." His kids glanced up, worry flickering across their faces. It hit Method. This was their stability. Buying uprooted again, and I felt a pang, off guilt, but I also knew this couldn't go, not like this. The days dragged on up, a silent testament to the attention in the house. R started, at first, then with more urgency. He found the place. Mom said very little during those days, sure disappointments. Heavy in the air, Buddhas, the moving day approached. She started to open up a bit, perhaps, realizing that this needed to happen no matter how painful it was on the day I moved out. It was all business. No tearful goodbyes, no last minute pleas to stay. Just box after box being carried out to a rental van. His kids hugged Mom before they left. The silent promise to keep in touch. Her shook my hand. A gesture of peace or made, just closure. I couldn't tell whither his kids gone. The house felt empty larger. Mom and I spent the next few days in a quiet standoff. She was hurt and Ick knew it. I tried to bridge the gap, suggesting a movie night or a dinner out, but she was distant. It was going to take time, that much was clear. During those quiet days, I reflected a lot on how things had gone so wrong. I wondered if there was something I could have done differently, some way to have avoided the fallout, but every time I replayed the conversations, the confrontations, I came back to the same conclusion. I had to stand up for myself, for my space maybe. I could have been more diplomatic, sure, but at the end of that day, it was my home, and I couldn't live like a stranger in it. It took a few weeks. But slowly, Mom started commingling. We began talking. More not just about what had happened, but about everything else. Work life, the late books. We'd read it was like we were building our relationship one conversation. At a time, one evening, sitting on the back porch, Mom finally brought it up. "I'm sorry," she said, looking out at the garden. "I should have listened to tell you more. I got caught up in I don't know, and how I wanted things to be Irished over," and squeezed her hand. "It's okay, Mom. I get it. You wanted to be happy." We thought R was a part of that. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I did, but I forgot that your happiness matters too. I won't make that mistake again." We sat there for a while, just watching the sunset, the weight of the past few weeks, lifting bit by bit. It wasn't a perfect resolution, and there were still some rough edges to smooth out, but it felt like a start. To start to something better, something we could both live with the days following. Our temperature felt like the slow return off normally in our house, or at least what passed for normal after everything that had gone down the year was lighter. And even though there was still a hint of tension between Mom and me, each day chipped away. The wall that had built up during AR's stay, Mom started to get back to her old self, the one I remember bore all this mess. She began tackling bricks around the house that she'd put off for months, repainting the guest room, fixing up the backyard garden, and even planning some DIY decor projects. It was good to see her taking interest in the house again. Not just as a place she was staying because of bad circumstances, but as a home we had our heart to. Hearts usually over dinner, or while watching TV. The evenings, it wasn't easy at first. There were a lot of unspoken things changing between us, but we made an effort to own night. While we were clearing the dishes, she paused and looked at me, a serious look on her face. I've been thinking a lot about everything. With a pen, she started wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I know I put you in a tough spot with R, and I didn't see things clearly." I put down the plate. I washed her and leaned against the counter. "No, Mom, it got pretty rough there." For a bit, she nodded. Swallowing hard, I let my feelings for him blind me to what he was telling to you, to us. It's not an excuse of it. I guess I wanted it to work so badly that I ignored the sign sharing her say that acknowledging the strain her had put on us felt like a turning point. It means a lot hearing you say that. I just wanted you to be happy, but not at the cost of our home. Feeling like a battleground, she reached out and squeezed my arm. "I've made an appointment with a therapist," she said almost in a whisper. "I think it's time I sorted out some things, figure out why I let fathom me." That was a big step for her, and I couldn't help but feel proud. Mom had always been the type to think she could handle everything on her own, seeing her tact. This step towards self-care and heat was a relief. "We'll get through his Mom together," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a genuine smile spread across her face. The next few weeks were a period of adjustment with R and his kids gone. The house seemed too quiet at times, but it was a peaceful quiet, the kind that lets you out think and breathe without feeling like you. Stepping one eggshells, we took the opportunity to redefine our living arrangement. We set new boundaries and expectations. Mackingser, we were both comfortable with. These stuff. It wasn't just my house, it was our home, and we both needed to feel safe and respected. Here one afternoon, I came home, he told, find Mom in the living room, surrounded by photos, albums, and old family videos. She waved me over a nostalgic look on her. Face come, hair taken. A look at this, she beckoned, patting sofa next to her. We spent ours going through the albums, laughing at it. Old memories and sharing stories from when I was a kid. It was the most connected I'd felt with her in a long time. It was like we were rebuilding our relationship from the ground up, finding our way back to each other after being pulled apart by circumstances and hours' influence as weathering the pages. It struck me how much a story we had, how many ups and downs we navigated. Together, this was just another chapter in our story, one that we were closing together. I'm sorry for everything, really, Mom said, as we closed the last album, but I'm here now, fully, no more distraction of it. Appreciate that, Mom, and I'm here to a repelite squeeze. Her hand, we had both learned a lot about each other and ourselves. Through this ordeal, the importance of communication, of setting boundaries, and of supporting each other without condition. In the end, their solution wasn't just about our leaving goal, about us getting back to normal. It was about understanding and respecting others' needs and spaces. It ways about growing from the experience. Not just moving past it, life went on as Ado's mom continued her therapy, and I got back into my routine. Work and friends, the house felt like mine, ag and bud. More importantly, it felt like ours, mine, and mom's. We were a team, and whatever came next. I knew we'd handle it together with open hearts and a clear understanding of what made our home a sanctuary for both of us. So yeah, it was a rough patch, but like all tough times, offered lessons worth learning. And as for me and mom, we were better than okay. We were stronger, closer, and more in tune with each other than we'd ever been. Here's to new beginnings. Right? I'm going to answer some of questions. 1. Yes, I was well aware when moving and that it would be my house. He was staying in as he asked me up and moving in about rent and such. However, on a good wage and more than capable of covering household expenses, and did not charge him for staying as they wearingly staying until the global issue AITA too. I'm not kicking my mom out. She needs a therapist, not a change of address. She and I have been casual at dating for nearly a year, but start edging serious. At the beginning of lockdown, since it was a growing relationship, my mom suggested we all lock down together, so we could all get to know each other better. 3 of us are curious about my parents' marriage and how it ended. Dad was controlling and manipulative, and he hit it well, just like he hit his girlfriend. Sure, were no fights or divorces. He was me dad, and I do care, but he played A with the wrong woman and paid the ultimate price on her car bonnet. It's sad, but I can't be angry about it.